Today on Law Next, perspectives on the European and Russian legal tech market from Holger Zscheyge. He is the current president of the European Legal Technology Association. He's also the founder and managing director of Infotropic Media, a Moscow-based legal publisher and legal innovation event organizer. Both in Russia and throughout Europe, he is widely regarded as a leading authority on legal technology. This is Bob Ambrogi, and you are listening to Law Next, the podcast that features the innovators and entrepreneurs who are driving what's next in law. We'll get to our interview in just a moment, but first, let's hear from one of the sponsors who so generously supports Law Next. Practice Panther is a law firm's one-stop shop for practice management. Attorneys can quickly access client information, matters, built-in e-payments processing, integrations, and more anytime, anywhere. With Practice Panther, managing your practice won't be a headache. Learn more during a free demo. Go to practicepanther.com/lawnext. Now, on to today's interview. Holger, how are you this morning? This afternoon for you, but how are you today?
I'm fine, Bob. Thanks for having me, and good to be back on your show.
Yeah, it's good to talk to you again. You were actually on this podcast, episode 20 of this podcast, not long after I had launched it back in 2018 when I had the good fortune to be in Moscow and sit and have a conversation with you face to face. That seems like a long time ago when we were even able to do that. But
Yes. Well, number 20 is good. It's like one of the first employees of Google.
Exactly. If only there was some stock in this that I could cash in. How have you been? How has this last year been for you?
Well, it's difficult, like for everybody else, because usually, as you said, I'm based in Moscow. I should be in Moscow, but I haven't been to Russia for over a year now. So I'm working very remotely, but everybody's working remotely now, and so it's not a big difference. It's handleable. It's not ideal, but well, we cope with it as everybody else.
You are in Germany as we speak, right? And
yes, I'm just outside of Berlin now.
I know you're a native of Germany. You lived in Russia for many years.
Yep, but still, I still have a base in Germany, so I don't live on the streets.
Good,
fortunately.
That's good.
So, but it's hard for everyone. But
yeah. So Holger, there's a lot I want to get to today during our interview, but why don't we start? I introduced you briefly, but why don't you tell us a little bit more about yourself and what you do?
Okay, as you said, I'm a legal publisher. That's my calling or my job. It's more than a job. I'm in legal publishing for more than 25 years now. All of it in Russia. It happened by accident. A friend of mine called me in 1995 and said somebody is sending him to Russia in order to establish a Russian subsidiary for a large Dutch or multinational publishing company.
Which was Wolters Kluwer.
Probably better known as CCH, probably in the US. And so I came into publishing. I love it, still love it. And after working for Wolters Kluwer and for a large German legal publisher, in 2009, I established my own publishing company, Infotropic Media. And we are basically a small legal publisher of books. We had some journals, but gave them away when the Russian government decided that foreign companies cannot own more than 20% in media companies, and even a small legal journal is considered a media asset. And started in 2016, started to go into legal technology, just to have a new topic for books, for journals, and so on. And since then, I'm getting more and more involved into legal technology, legal innovation. Started the first legal tech conference in Russia, Moscow Legal Tech, and a couple of other more legal AI and cybersecurity for lawyers and so on. So everything on the intersection of law and technology. So that's what I do for a living, and what I like and would like to extend in the future.
Yeah, in terms of the Russia legal tech scene, you are also a co-founder of Moscow Legal Hackers.
Yes. That's also one of the projects I'm involved in. We just saw the legal hackers community extending into Eastern Europe. So a couple of friends of mine and I myself have been at the first legal tech hackathon in Eastern Europe in Kiev, Ukraine. And we all came back very enthusiastic and said we have to do something like that in Russia. So we came up with Moscow Legal Hackers in 2017. And we already now, we have 2 chapters in Russia, Legal Hackers chapters, one in Moscow, one in St. Petersburg. And just about 2 weeks ago, the first student Legal Hackers group started at the Higher School of Economics in Moscow.
That's interesting. And then you are also, as of last November, I think it was, president of the European Legal Technology Association. What is ELTA? What is its focus? What is its purpose? What is its mission?
Well, ELTA is a legal tech association, as the name tells, and it came up as the beginning. The beginning of ELTA is purely a German initiative. So one of the co-founders of ELTA came back from the ELTA conference in the US in 2016 and was asking himself, why don't we have something like that in Europe? Because legal tech back then, 2015, 2016, became very hot in Europe. Everybody was talking about legal technology and how we should use it in the practice of law. But there was no organization, association in Europe. And ELTA, despite of the name, is much more focused on the US and Canadian market. So they haven't been very active in Europe. So those guys decided to set up an association. If you know the Germans, you cannot do anything serious in Germany, even breeding rabbits without setting up an association. So ELTA came to life and it started to become more European. You see that within the board from a lot of different European countries. We have a network of local representatives. We call them ambassadors. They are basically the boots on the ground for ELTA because Europe is 50-50 countries, so different locations, different jurisdictions, different levels of regulation, and legal tech development, legal market development, and so on. And so you have to people which are very much involved in the legal community, and ELTA has that in more than 29 countries of Europe. So we see ourselves as an association that gives a platform to all legal tech enthusiasts in Europe, build up a community, build up an expert network, and so on. So that's the main purpose of ELTA, to build up a community of people which look to implement technology or to work on the intersection of law and technology.
And do you have any specific priorities or goals for your term? What is your term as president? 2-year term? Is that what I read?
Well, usually it's 2 years.
Yeah. So do you have any specific priorities or goals for your term as president?
Yes, we want to get the members more involved, and we will concentrate on the users of legal tech, so the law firms, legal departments, a little bit the judiciary. And if we concentrate on those target audiences, probably everybody else, all the other stakeholders of the legal tech ecosystem will probably group around us as well. The vendors, students, maybe even governments. So we are not seeing ourselves as a lobbying group for the legal tech industry per se, but we would like to give feedback from the community to lawmakers, help them to influence legislation or come up with ideas how to regulate or deregulate even the legal industry, legal tech industry, and give a boost to legal tech, speed up the implementation, because it's a very long process to convince lawyers to use technology. But I'm preaching to the choir now.
You are preaching to the choir. Well, how would you? I mean, I heard what you just said earlier, which is that of course Europe is made up of many different jurisdictions and countries, and I'm sure there are various states of adoption of legal technology throughout Europe. But how would you kind of characterize the overall state of the legal tech market in Europe? And with specifically the legal industry's use and adoption of legal tech.
Well, interesting enough, there seems to be legal tech in almost every country. So we are now extending the legal tech or the ambassadors network. We just added ambassadors for Cyprus and Belarus. So probably not the locations you would say you can find a lot of legal tech, but there's legal tech in Belarus, there's legal tech on Cyprus. So something is going on in every jurisdiction, and lawyers. I'm not a big believer in the myth that lawyers are technophobes. Lawyers are, on contrary, quite able to use technologies. If you look back, well, I don't have any statistics to back it up, but I have the feeling that lawyers have been the largest user groups for the BlackBerry. Mm-hmm. Some use it still, and same with the iPhone or smartphones. So if lawyers are convinced that technology will help them, they will use it. But something probably has been done wrong to introduce legal tech into the legal community. So there's something going on in all the European countries, but we have different levels, of course, different levels of tech adoption. Basically depends on regulation and depends on the size of the local legal services market. So if you look at the number 2, number 3, UK, Germany, larger markets like France, Italy, or Spain, there's a lot of tech implementation and legal tech development going on. Unfortunately, most of those markets are heavily regulated, and then you have smaller markets which are not regulated at all, or basically not regulated, like Russia is one of those countries, Sweden, Switzerland, and surprisingly enough, those markets are not breaking down. There's not chaos in the legal services market, and they all work perfectly well. So it's probably not an issue of regulation or deregulation. All the markets are working fine, so we have to find ways maybe to let everybody live on the market, legal tech vendors, alternative service providers, and so on, together with the traditional providers of legal services. Seems to work.
Yeah. As a matter of fact, Russia, you told me last time we spoke, has really no restrictions on who can practice law except in the criminal courts. But in the otherwise, when we last spoke, you said you could go into court even though you're not a lawyer and represent a client.
Well, that's a little bit different now. They introduced in October 2019. They introduced new regulations, so you have to have at least a law degree in order to represent somebody in court. Not only criminal in criminal proceedings, but civil and commercial proceedings as well. But that's the only restriction they added. But in terms of legal consulting, everybody can do it. You don't have to be a lawyer, don't have to be a member of the bar, don't have to even have a law degree. So that's quite a good starting point for legal tech companies, because they can freely go into competition to law firms.
Yeah. And I agree with you when you say that lawyers are not necessarily adverse to change or to using technology, and certainly in the years that I've followed this area, lawyers have in some ways been at the forefront of new technologies, but probably not in large numbers. There was always sort of I think a vanguard of the legal profession that was adopting technology, and others were slower to follow. When last we spoke in 2018, we were talking about the Russian market, and you said then that the market was beginning to become more mature in terms of its use of legal tech from what you had seen initially, but that seemed to be happening more within legal departments and perhaps less among law firms and legal professionals in law firms. Yeah. Is that still the case, or have you seen that change or evolve at all?
It's still the case. So the legal departments, they have been the front runners just because they have been under pressure from the business side, and now or maybe then as well as after COVID, even more, because everybody's running out of money. So there's pressure on the legal departments to become more efficient, spend less money, or do more work for the same amount of money. And that's still the case. And more legal departments are starting to use legal technology, and you see it even on the job sites. Vacancies are popping up for legal technologists or legal engineers more and more. But the law firms, they are already starting to look into legal technology, and you have even a couple of legal tech vendors that are spun-offs of small and medium law firms. So where somebody, usually a partner or the managing partner, thought, well, we should do something, looked into the market, couldn't find the tool, and developed the tool themselves. So that's quite an interesting development. And this year, there's for the second time, there's a survey on even among the members of the bar, which is some kind of elite in Russia. You don't have to be a member of the bar in order to practice law. So most of the lawyers are not members of the bar, but there's a survey for the second time this year about using technology among the members of the bar, and those numbers are increasing as well. It's a slow process, but there's a positive trend.
Holger Zscheyge has a unique perspective on the legal tech market in Europe and Eastern Europe. He's usually based in Russia, where he runs a legal publishing company, and produces conferences on legal technology and innovation. But he is also president of the European Legal Technology Association and is currently living in his native Germany until pandemic travel restrictions lift and he can return to Moscow. As he just explained, in Russia, legal departments have been the front runners in adopting legal technology, while law firms are only just starting to catch up. But what is he seeing throughout other parts of Europe? When we return, we'll discuss trends in Europe in legal tech adoption and innovation. But first, let's hear from the sponsors who generously support Law Next. Attorneys are busy and always on the go. They can't be tied down with dated software or rely on being in the office. Practice Panther allows attorneys to access their practice anytime, anywhere. From CRM to client communication, billing, and e-payments, Practice Panther meets you where you are. Learn more with a free demo. Go to practicepanther.com/lawnext. Last year's events brought big changes to the legal industry, including a mix of new ideas and innovations. To make sense of it all, Everlaw is hosting Illuminate 2021, a 2-day virtual event with some of the top luminaries in the legal and e-discovery space. The event will kick off on April 27th. Over the course of 12 sessions, industry leaders will discuss how legal professionals have adapted and evolved to the new normal. One of these sessions will feature the keynote speaker, Minnesota Attorney General Keith Ellison. Additionally, attorneys can earn CLE credit for attending the CLE accredited sessions. To learn more, please visit everlaw.com/illuminate. Welcome back to Law Next. Something I've learned through my travels and conversations over the years with people all over the world is that the issues we face in the United States with regard to improving the delivery of legal services and access to justice are issues that legal professionals face everywhere in the world. In the second half of my interview with Holger Zscheyge, we get to the state of some of these issues in Europe, including the extent of legal tech adoption, efforts at regulatory reform, the need for law schools to better teach tech, bridging the justice gap, and COVID's impact on the profession. I start by asking him how legal tech adoption across Europe compares to what he's seen in Russia. An article published in a London legal newspaper just before our interview bore the headline, "Resistance to Legal Tech Fast Evaporating." I asked Zscheyge if he agreed with that.
Well, I wouldn't say it's fast evaporating, but I guess COVID gave it a boost because lawyers saw that without some kind of technology, at least, it's hard to survive because, you see it also, even in Russia. I always cite that issue. 2 years ago, it would be impossible to talk with a lawyer or judge about having court proceedings online. It was just impossible to imagine. Nobody was even talking about that possibility. Then COVID struck and the courts were closed, so everybody was looking for a solution. And it came out that especially the commercial courts in Russia are quite well equipped with software and equipment, so they have a system that automates all the whole commercial court system in Russia for over 10 years now. And they just found out that they have an item in the menu where they just could start out of that system that automates all the court system. They could start an online proceeding, a video conference. They had it for 10 years in the software, but nobody knew it, nobody used it. So that will change just out of necessity. So if you don't have all your matters, all your cases online, you cannot travel to your office to look in a binder. So you have to have it all in digital format. So that might speed up a little bit. It's always the problem, as I see it, is that maybe we do not sell legal tech how we should sell it to lawyers. It's always going a little bit over fear, and your business model is wrong, your attitude towards tech is wrong, and so on. You cannot motivate somebody by fear or telling them they are doing everything wrong. It's like motivating somebody to go to the gym by calling him or by fat shaming him. You have to emphasize on the positive aspect. Your chances on Tinder will be better if you have a six-pack.
So how do you do that with regard to legal technology? What is the?
Well, you have to show the lawyers the money. Everybody wants to earn more money or become more profitable. Mm-hmm. So those are the two aspects legal tech can positively impact. It can positively impact your profitability by cutting costs, and not because cutting costs by getting rid of the lawyers, but just by spending less money on bread and butter tasks, something an algorithm could do faster and better and without a lot of errors, or by opening new markets. And I see the aspect of opening new markets by technology is something quite ignored. Also, I see lawyers are sitting in a bubble, and it's a huge bubble. It's a $1 trillion bubble, right. So, but nobody sees that bubble. But if you're looking at the access to justice problem, with 80% of the population in almost every civilized mm-hmm. country doesn't have the access, either because they cannot afford it or they don't see the price structure to be sufficiently transparent. So they just don't understand why they should pay $500 per hour for something easy as setting up a will or drafting a sales purchase contract. So there's something technology can change, and it's already changing. If you look at the European landscape with the compensation for the delay or cancellation of an airline flight. Mm-hmm. The legislation was existing before all those platforms like Flightride and other platforms have been popping up, but nobody was using it because spending €400 on a lawyer to get €250 back from the airline, it's nonsense. Nobody will do that.
Yeah, but
so that might be there is a huge market outside of that bubble.
Right. Yep. Yeah, but the challenge in talking to lawyers about that is that they see some of these technologies as threatening their ability to make money, not enhancing it. I mean, like what you just talked about, some of the self-help apps that eliminate the need to work through a lawyer to get legal relief of some kind. Lawyers see those as challenging their domain.
Yeah. Well, it's challenging because somebody else is doing it. Why can a lawyer do the same? Legal service, like every service industry, has a scalability problem. So in order to serve more customers, you have to hire more people usually. But there's a huge amount of tasks that could be done by an algorithm, and then you take your service and use technology to transform it into a product, and then you can scale it. And if companies like Flightride was started by two lawyers, one of those lawyers was just fed up because he didn't see a way how to get easily the compensation from the airline. Right. And that was a typical approach of a lawyer. Nobody outside of the legal profession would spend a lot of time and effort on getting €250 back from an airline, where they know they're too small to fight the law firms of the airline. It's impossible to get that money back, but try to convince a lawyer. They look at the legislation, say, okay, I have the right to get it back, and they fought it until the end and made a service out of it. So that says that's something a lawyer could do with technology, in not serving one client with a will, but serving, 10,000 who do the work on a website, filling out a survey and getting a PDF at the end that they will just sign, and that's it. And you don't have to be involved as a lawyer, but you put your knowledge, your experience into an algorithm and provide a product instead of a service.
You've talked about the issue of regulation of the legal profession and how that may or may not, in some cases, impact innovation and adoption of technology. You wrote a great article on LinkedIn about the Arizona decision here in the United States to allow non-lawyer ownership. And I have to quote your article because it was the best description I've ever seen of this. You said that the legal media was talking about this decision to allow non-lawyer ownership in law firms in Arizona as if they were writing about the first confirmed landing of an alien spaceship in downtown Phoenix, which is right on in terms of how people responded to this. Yeah. I'm wondering what the regulatory challenges are that remain in Europe. To what extent are the kinds of regulatory challenges we're confronting here in the United States obstructing innovation in Europe, and what's being done about that?
Well, it differs from country to country.
I understand it's hard to generalize, but
yep, yeah. But the main issue is that there is a very narrow definition of who can practice law. And of course, I understand you don't study law for a couple of years just to realize that everybody else can do it without studying the law. That would be some kind of unfair competition. But again, if there is a huge amount of people out there who cannot afford your services, and if there is a possibility to serve those people without having a law degree or without human interaction, why not use that? I don't see a lot of business from the established or from traditional legal services going over to non-lawyer based services or automated services. Just there's not a lot of overlap. And if people can afford a lawyer, they will go to a lawyer. But there are things an algorithm could solve much more cheaper and easier. And why not use that? So we should probably get away from that anthropocentric approach that only a human can or a human lawyer can solve a legal problem. So that's the very narrow definition. And it's always discussed with experience and trust into lawyers, and we should save the customer from unqualified practitioners of law and so on and so on. So everybody is talking about the consumer, but nobody is asking the consumer what the consumer wants. And I would say, again, I don't have a lot of statistics to back it up, but I would say the average consumer doesn't care who's helping him or her with a legal problem. They have a legal problem. They want to get it solved. And if that's an algorithm, it's fine with them. It's better to get a solution, or if you're talking about algorithms in the judicial area, I guess most of people would be happy to have at least a solution, a decision for their case. If it's a human lawyer, it's okay. If it's not a human lawyer, it's also okay. At least have a decision, at least in jurisdictions like Brazil or India, where you have millions and millions of cases. And even in Germany, I just read an article that the judiciary is desperately looking for personnel. Nobody wants to become a judge, or nobody wants to work in the court system. How do you solve that? You cannot produce more humans in a short period of time that would be able and willing to work in the court system. So the only way out is using technology.
Well, as you said earlier, you're preaching to the choir on that point, and often the decision isn't even one of between using an algorithm or using a lawyer. It's using an algorithm or not getting legal help at all. I mean, many people just can't ever afford a lawyer for some of the kinds of legal problems that these apps are able to address. Something else that you've written about recently, and I think that as we speak, you're actually involved in an event this week, is the need to get law schools to do a better job of training about legal technology and innovation. What are your thoughts on that, and what are you seeing? What's happening in that regard?
Well, that's exactly right, because we have to start at the law school level. Because if you're waiting until a student enters the workforce and then we have to teach them, to show them how to use technology, it's not going to happen, or it's going to change very slowly, because at the moment you're becoming a lawyer, you are swamped with day-to-day work. If you look at a lot of law firms, they just would like to use technology, but they don't have time to spend on getting acquainted with legal technology. So let's start at the law school. As a student, you have more time. You are more open to new things, to new technologies. And so if you enter the workforce and you just know how to use a case management system or e-signatures or e-discovery tools, whatever, it's natural to you. As a student, you're not going to the library to read case law. You're using a legal research tool. And then, of course, you will just see it as natural, and can help your colleagues and say, okay, well, I've been taught to use LexisNexis, Westlaw, whatever legal research tool, Lex Machina, and turns out you can be much quicker with that. Then you can decide either you invoice half the amount to the client and make him happy, or you just can do something in the free time and invoice the same amount to your client. That's already another decision, but you can be more effective even within your organization. So legal students of law can become change agents in that regard. So let's start with including legal tech into the legal education. And of course, academia is always a little bit behind, but I see law schools opening up more and more. And what we said, tomorrow we have the first event where 10 law schools in Russia combining their efforts and just exchange what they are doing. Some of them already included legal tech. They might call it not legal tech, but the technologies or whatever in law. But basically, they are legal tech courses. They want to show their students how to use technology, and we want to get the vendors also on board, that maybe some vendors could say, okay, you have a couple of free licenses free of charge, and that would be also interesting for a vendor, because if a student is learning on your case management system or your e-discovery system, then, well, chances are high that they will use it in the law firm or legal department environment as well, because they already know how to use it.
You've alluded couple of times during our conversation to the pandemic over the past year. There's sort of developed this idea among a number of observers of the legal technology market that there has been a silver lining, if you want to call it that, in the pandemic, at least with regard to legal technology, in that it seems to have accelerated use and adoption of technology, particularly among some who might have been holdouts before all this happened. What have you seen from where you sit, either in Europe or in Russia? What has been the impact of the pandemic on the legal technology market?
What I've seen is that, first of all, lawyers became much more aware of the use of technology. So they understood that without technology, you cannot practice law in the future, because something always will happen. And the pandemic probably showed them the necessity to use technology. They haven't seen it before because nobody was pressuring them. There was no real incentive. They have been happy to go to court. They have been happy to drive to the office, so they didn't have to have technology to work remotely or whatever. Now they know it's essential. And I hope that this understanding will persist and they will be open to more technology, because they finally understood that there's some use for technologies. For the legal tech industry, I also hope that there will be a boost. The big question will be, after the pandemic is over, will there be enough money in the market to buy legal technology? But let's see. I'm optimistic, and we see it. If you're looking at the investment going into the legal tech industry, it's still strong. It's even growing. So there might be enough money going around for legal tech vendors to survive until law firms, legal departments are ready to spend money on technology. So I'm optimistic for the time after the pandemic.
Yeah, and where are those investor dollars going? What are the hottest sectors of the legal tech market that you're seeing?
Well, I'm always a little bit reluctant, because I don't know what their decision is based on. Sometimes I have the impression that somebody is investing in some vertical, and then everybody else is investing, or they are going for the low-hanging fruit. So if you look at contracts, it's an 80 billion market, contracts. So of course there should be some money and automating all the contract work, the contract lifecycle management. There should be money, and so everybody is investing in money. E-signatures as well. It's a much smaller market in it itself, but I don't know. It sounds interesting, probably to some investors. E-discovery tools also quite a huge market. But frankly, I don't see all the time the motivation for investing in a specific vertical. And maybe sometimes it's more not only following the competition, but maybe it's more focused on a specific company, not a vertical. But because if you're looking at companies, they are 5 months on the market and already get double-digit million investments. I don't know.
Yeah,
might be a bet. But overall, if you look at the investments over the last 4 or 5 years, you see a trend that the investment, it's going from the pre-seed and seed, stage A, stage B investment. So it's less a bet on the overall market, legal tech market, and more into investors seeing that legal tech is becoming a more major market, and they are willing to invest larger amounts of money. So maybe 500,000 are a bet, 5 million are already not a bad.
Right, or 50 million, yeah,
or 50 million.
And as you mentioned, contracts has been a big beneficiary of that trend, I guess, both here in the United States and internationally. The CLM products have been very hot,
and rightly so, I would say.
Although you wonder, I mean, again, you kind of wonder how that market plays out. There's a lot of competitors in it right now, and some very similar products. You feel like somebody's got to start to dominate that market at some point.
Probably there will be some consolidation in the near future, or somebody will just have to go into other markets. But
yeah. Holger, we are about out of time here, but any final thoughts that you'd like to share with our listeners about yourself, about the legal tech market, about the weather?
Well, I would like. I would like to encourage everybody, if you're interested in legal tech, if you're interested in legal tech in Europe, you can always join ELTA. So we have come up with some initiatives for ELTA members, of course, but not only for members. ELTA is going to establish an ELTA expert network. So you become even a member of that ELTA expert network, even if you're not a member of ELTA. Ultimately, we will probably lure you in becoming an ELTA member. There are quite a lot of benefits for becoming an ELTA member, but you can become part of that network of experts, that community, even not being an ELTA member. We are going to set up an ELTA Academy in order to share that knowledge we accumulated. So there will be, and we will publish that probably now in end of March or start of April, out into the public with those initiatives. So I encourage everybody who's interested in the legal tech industry, or the legal industry even in general in Europe, join ELTA, join our initiatives. You're always welcome from every country. You can be from Albania, you can be from France. You're equally welcome.
And even from the United States?
Even from we have members in Peru and in the US, so there's no barrier to entry. And we will even probably extend our ambassadors network to countries outside of Europe, because we want to go into research as well, and it's always good to have some input from people in all those countries. There's a lot of development going on outside of Europe, of course, especially in the US and Australia and Asia. And even in Africa, we look at Africa. We are on talks with the first ambassadors in Africa, because there's a lot going on, and we could probably learn from a couple of countries in Africa, because they are facing obstacles in their legal markets we couldn't even imagine in Europe or in the US, and they are solving those problems, those obstacles with technology, and are very good at that. So there should be an exchange of ideas, of experiences, of knowledge. That's always good.
Yeah, Africa is a really interesting market right now, and there's a lot going on in the legal tech area. I mean, it's a somewhat nascent market, but it's very active right now. And you said this earlier in the conversation, but so many of the issues that we tend to think at least maybe here in the United States, a lot of the issues that we tend to think we face we tend to think are unique to the United States in the legal tech world are not at all unique to the United States. Access to justice, as you mentioned, is a global problem, and pretty much the same problem all across the world. And it's something that the more we all work together and come together, the better we can address these issues.
It doesn't seem to depend on the level of wealth or economic development. It's a problem in the most developed countries, and it's a problem in the least developed countries. So maybe we can learn from each other. Maybe we can find the reason why somebody in the US doesn't have access to justice, or why somebody in Vietnam doesn't have access to justice, and how that has been solved with much less resources in Vietnam. And maybe that could be a solution for the United States, or for France, or for Germany as well.
Well, Holger, thank you very much for coming back a second time to be on my Law Next podcast. I really appreciate it, and it's been a real pleasure to speak with you and catch up with you.
Thank you, Bob. Yeah, it was a pleasure for me as well. And anytime, just give a call.
My sincere thanks to Holger Zscheyge for joining me today on Law Next. I hope you enjoyed the show. Another show to check out is Contract Teardown, just launched by our sponsor Law Insider on YouTube. Each week, they analyze contracts ranging from Y Combinator's SAFE agreement to Robinhood Financial's terms of service. Find them at lawinsider.com/resources. Law Next is produced, engineered, and edited by Populous Radio. I'm your host, Bob Ambrogi. I hope you'll join us again next time for another episode of Law Next.